What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Sunnydale Live. I'm Jonathan, and today's episode is I, Robot You, Jade, which is such a weird name, but alright, roll it past it. It's kind of the first Willow-centric episode. And this episode, I think more than any other episode, maybe on the entire series, dates this show. It's pretty astonishing. I mean, right off the bat, the thing that makes you like, oh wow, this was such a long time ago is there's a scene later on in the episode where a kid's typing on his laptop and you just look at the laptop and you're like, oh, that's a relic. Like, it's so big and bulky. And you can't help but be like, oh wow, this was so long ago. Oh, it was so quaint. But even like the theme and message of this episode, we've moved so far beyond that we've actually ended up in a world that's the exact opposite. It's a little wild. But let's get into it. So the episode starts back in the past, in 1418 Italy, with this demon called like Moloch the Corruptor seducing this guy. And we see these monks put a spell on him and trap him in a book. Like, he literally becomes the pages of a book. It's a really interesting premise that they never touch on again, but I'm like, why didn't you do that to Glory? That would have been such an easier answer. But I digress. We fast forward to the future. Buffy unhouses the book, and we see that Jenny Calendar, her first appearance, some of her students, Fritz and Dave, really creepy guys, especially Fritz. Dude's insane. If you're not jacked in, you're not alive. It's just like, calm down. Like, it's just a computer. You're a little over the top. Dude's freaky. Like, psychotic freaky. But they're scanning all of the books in the library into the computer, which I think is kind of cool. It's kind of what our whole internet system's based off of now. You can find anything online. It's all there. But this was kind of the start of it. And they scanned in the Moloch book, and Moloch starts talking to Willow. It takes a while for Giles to figure out, like, these things start happening. Things are kind of weird. And he realizes the book is empty. And he's like, someone read the book and brought him to life. Buffy puts together that, oh, the computer read the book, and he's now in the internet. But it's a wild ride to get there. So right off the bat, Willow starts showing up to school late, starts acting weird. Buffy's nervous for a friend until Willow says, like, I've met a guy. And then Buffy's all like, oh, tell me everything. I want to know. Who's this guy? And Willow breaks down that the dude she met online. She doesn't know, like, everything she's saying, Buffy's on board with. Until Buffy asks, like, so what does he look like? And she's like, I don't know. And the second Buffy realizes that she's never met this guy, her whole atmosphere towards it changes. And this is part of what I mean by, like, our society has shifted so much from when this episode came out. You kind of had to have been around back then to understand it. But there was this real fear of meeting strangers online, and you can't talk to strangers on the internet because they're going to hurt you. They're like, basically everything they're saying in this episode was the real fear. And a lot of it was founded. Like, things like that were happening, like the Craigslist killer and things like that. These were real things. But now, I mean, I've dated girls I've met online. Best friend married her husband. They met on a dating app. Like, it is wild how far we've come from the very real concern this episode's talking about to just throwing that out the window and redesigning our entire society to be based almost exclusively on people you meet online. It's wild. It's one of the things that dates this episode, because the fears that they're talking about, no one even thinks about. Literally, if I want to go to the store and I don't have a car, I call a stranger on the I basically hit a button and it contacts a stranger to drive to my house and pick me up and take me somewhere, which I guess is not that far removed from a taxi, but those were employee. Like, it's weird. Our whole society has shifted, and nothing makes that more apparent and more jarring than watching something talking about the dangers of meeting people online. It is wild. It's insane. Like it's crazy. The show's not that old. So for us to be so shifted in what's culturally accepted and culturally norm from just a couple decades ago is pretty crazy. Um, on one of my podcasts I do on my other YouTube channel, Bluer Productions, you check it out. We were just talking about how violent crimes statistically are actually down, but we as a society are more afraid than pretty much at any time before. We don't really let kids play outside. I mean, in some states you can get in trouble for that. We don't really communicate with our neighbors. We're very isolationalists. And it's a lot of it is just not trusting. People are less trustworthy now than they've been, I think, as long as I've been alive. And yet, random people we meet on the internet, we trust with complete faith. It's wild. It's insane. We form very real bonds and relationships with people we've never met, whereas people who we see every day, we're like, oh, you got to be cautious. It's a weird mentality that we've embraced. And nothing really makes you think about that until you watch something that was made back then that was like, oh, this is dangerous. It's weird. It's definitely something you got to take a step back and just think about and be like, how did we get here from there? Because that's a wild jump and a wild leap, and it's just weird. I don't know. I find that odd. Maybe I'm alone. Maybe I'm the only person who thinks that how we've progressed as a society is odd based on where we started. But it's nothing to do with Buffy. Oh, I mean, it is, because that's what the episode was about. That's what the episode was trying to get us to think about. One of the things. There's more things as we go along. Xander is jealous of Willow having a guy. I don't know if it's that he's jealous that Willow's interested in someone who's not him, or if he just feels alone. There's something about when all your friends couple up and you don't. There's a sense of loneliness to it. Like, oh, our group is gone and I'm the last man standing. And no one wants to be the last man standing. Not in that sense, anyways. You always know it's going to happen, but you like to think that you're one of the people who's going to leave the ball early. When you're the last person on the dance floor, it's like, oh, okay. Well, I've made odd choices. But as the episode progresses, Buffy starts to get more and more like concerned about who Willow's dating, because Willow's whole personality is changing, which is, even if it's a good relationship, is a real thing. Like, you see it all the time in relationships. I know I've had my actions pointed out to me when I'm in a relationship and I start to shift away from who I normally am to accommodate it. It's not healthy, but we all do it. Like, so it's good to have good friends like Buffy who would point that out to you, be like, hey, you're acting kind of fucked up. Maybe you need to calm down. And of course, Willow overreacts to it. Buffy tries to get help finding out who Moloch is, or Malcolm, that's what he's calling himself. She goes to Dave, and Dave flips out and tells her it's none of his business. Real creepy, psychotic vibes. Giles and Jenny argue over the difference between books and computers and which one's better and more important. And that's kind of a theme that happens throughout the episode. And there's real chemistry there. You can't help but be like, oh, they're kind of cute together. Like, I love the bickering and the arguing. It's always fun. Playful bickering is some of the most enjoying things you can do. If it's playful. Once it becomes like antagonistic, then it's a problem. But like playful banter, it's enjoyable. And that's very much what Jenny and Giles have. They come from very different points of view, very, very different perspectives, but it's all kind of playful. She's definitely like poking at him a little bit, and he's taking the bait, and it's fun. Dave tries to kill Buffy. Dave sends Buffy to the locker room to look for Willow, and Fritz sets it up so she gets electrocuted, but Dave has second thoughts and screams out to warn her, and then Moloch writes a suicide note and has Fritz kill Dave, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, this is insane. You can't just go around killing people, but they do. Oh, but before that, Buffy followed Dave to this old factory, and her and Giles are trying to figure out what it is. And for once, Xander knows everything. He explains what it was, when it shut down, what they do there, because his uncle used to work there. It's like, oh, Xander's like, what, I can't know things? And they're like, yeah, that's kind of unprecedented. It's just like, damn, take a shot at Xander, why don't you? Willow starts to have second thoughts about Malcolm when he knows information about Buffy that he shouldn't, and he lets slip that he looked it up in her permanent record, which is like, what the fuck? Why are you looking at her permanent record? How did you even get access to that? So she starts ignoring him, which one of the complaints Buffy had was like, well, go meet him in public, and then, you know, we'll take it from there. Like, you should actually meet this person to make sure that you're not being catfished, that they are who they say they are. And now he's finally like, I want to meet in person, and she blows him off. She shuts down the computer, and so Fritz kidnaps her. And it's like, oh shit. Buffy and Xander go looking for Willow, but I do love Jenny comes into the library, and Buffy and Xander are there, and she's like, you guys are here again? You guys really love the library. And Buffy's like, well, we're literate. But Xander's lied. I wrote it down because it's insane. Because it's just like, what the fuck, man? How do you talk like this? Let me see, where is it? To read makes our speaking English is good. To read is making our speaking English is good. It's just like, why? He gets tongue-tied when he talks to pretty girls. He did it when he talks to Buffy. He did it when talks to the praying mantis. And now he's doing it when he's talking to Jenny. And it's just like, dude, my man. Like, wait for your brain to catch up before you open your mouth and you let words come out. You'll be better off for it. But while Buffy and Xander go look for Willow, Buffy sends Giles to talk to Jenny to see if she can help. And so Giles, you know, he's all nervous, and he's like, how do I explain to her that witchcraft is real, demons are real, all of this is real? And so as soon as he just kind of blurts it out, and her first response is like, I know. And it turns out she's like a techo-pagan, and she knows all about this. She even knew who Moloch the Corruptor was. She's read all about him. Like, she's really invested in all the lore and the supernatural aspects. She even has a coven, and it's just like, what? You don't expect it. You don't see it coming. It just kind of comes out of left field, and it's like, whoa, okay, that's interesting. So Jenny gets a group together to try to trap the demon back in the book. Buffy and Xander go to find Willow. Willow wakes up because she was chloroformed, and Malcolm, or Moloch, has a robotic body. The dude's a robot now. And he kills Fitz just because he's like, oh, I can kill people again. And it's like, what? Why is that something you're excited about? Murder is not a plus, ladies and gentlemen. It's a negative. Don't kill people. Don't know why that's something that has to be explained. Oh, demons. What are you going to do? Buffy and Xander show up, try to help. Willow shoots Malcolm down, or Moloch down. She's like, I don't want to be with you. And he's about to kill her when finally Jenny's spell works and he gets trapped. Only he doesn't get trapped in the book. He gets trapped in the robotic body. Buffy attacks him, gets laid out because dude's metal. He immediately knocks Xander out and overpowers Buffy. Willow takes a fire extinguisher and starts beating the shit out of him. And then he knocks her down, and it's like, this dude's stronger than all three Scoobies. What are they going to do? And Buffy outsmarts him. He swings, she ducks, he hits an electric box, and he's fried. And it really is like, oh. And so many movies have done this later, but when Xander's like, oh, Moloch won't be really, he's trapped on the internet. What can he do? And they're like, change traffic lights, destroy medical records, launch all the nukes. And it's like, oh, so many movies that came out after this episode have done those storylines. So what if they did do this thing? What if they did do that thing? And it's like, it's crazy. Even in the 90s, we're already like, the internet is potentially dangerous. What are we going to do about it? And our answer was turn everything over to the internet and let the internet control everything. There's a debate at the end of the episode, towards the end, between Giles and Jenny. And it's real flirtatious a little bit on the undertones, especially end. But the debate basically comes down to the same debate they've been having the entire episode. The internet versus books. Holding on to the past and the future. And when you watched it the first time when you're younger and closer to when it came out, you can... Excuse me. When you watch it like when it first, like closer to when it first came out, you could watch it and be like, oh, maybe Jenny's right or maybe Giles is right. And you're not 100% sure who's going to end up to be right. Watching it now in 2024, and it's like, oh, they were both 100% right. And it's kind of creepy. Jenny's point was that the internet's not a fad. It's going to stick around. It's going to be here. This is the new status quo, and you have to get used to it. 100% right. She also makes the argument that having access at her fingertips through the internet democratizes information. It gives more people access to more information than ever before. She's 100% right. Giles's argument is that there's something hollow about that information, that computers don't smell. And the most powerful sense to memory is smell. And when you hold a book in your hand, there's something tactile about it. There's something that just, it feels. And I know personally, and I'm sure a lot of people disagree, but I've never liked Kindle, like reading books on a Kindle or anything like that. There's something about it where I read it, I enjoy it, and then I immediately forget. But when I read a book, that information stays in my head for so much longer. There's something about reading a physical object that you can hold in your hands that has so much more merit and so much more value than something digital. But that's more of a preference on what style you like. The actual argument, Jenny was like, it gives you access to information, it democratizes information, yada yada. That was her argument. Giles's argument was that if we keep going down this route, we're going to become overly dependent on technology, which we are. Everything is on the internet. I mean, it's to the point where people don't even really carry cash on them. Everything's paid with a card, done digitally. He was like, it'll be easier to control and manipulate us if everything is digital. And he's right. You look at the world, you look at what's going on, and the divide in this country, politically, the political divide, is so much more than it's been at any time in my life. I can't say ever. I haven't been alive forever. But since I've been alive, it's stronger divide now than ever before. And so much of it is due to, if you believe this, you have these sources of information. If you believe this, you have these sources of information. And everyone is just kind of in their own echo chamber that keeps telling them what they want to believe. And there's something so inherently dangerous about only listening or only taking in information that validates your point of view. And it's just like, we live in an age where we have access to more information and more technology than ever before. And yet we're more ignorant than just about any other time in human history. Because we don't want the truth. We don't want information. We don't use the information we have access to. We just find people who tell us what we believe is right. And it is insane that this little show from the 90s did a throwaway episode about the dangers of technology. It really is. I mean, it's a filler episode. It's throwaway. And yet, it accurately predicted the world that we're living in decades later. Almost 30 years from when this episode came out. And it's kind of scary. I mean, it is kind of scary how close they were. But, I mean, we're not going to do anything to change it, right? We're just running down this timeline as fast as we can. Like, no one's making the arguments Giles made. No one's looking at how easily we are to control, because we just get all of our information from a little tiny rectangle that we keep in our pockets, and we don't question anything anymore. It's a lot. It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to process. I don't know. It's kind of heavy. This episode's not that heavy an episode, but when you think about the things they talk about, especially in the context of today, it's pretty heavy. It's pretty depressing. The ending of the episode, though, was kind of fun. Willow's depressed. It's kind of fun. Willow's depressed because she's like, oh, the only guy who really likes me turned out to be a demon. And then Buffy's like, well, the only guy I've been interested since moving here is a vampire. And Xander's like, yeah, I mean, I kind of went on a date with a praying mantis lady. Like, we're doomed. And it's crazy that they're right. If you look at the futures of the relationships, Buffy went and she dates Angel, the vampire. Then, not counting like Parker's dumbass or Scott Hope, her next relationship is with a military dude who's been chemically upgraded with basically like DNA, like demon stuff, and then a vampire. Then in the comics, she has a one night stand with a Slayer before going back to Spike. And then she ends up alone. Or at least that's where the book comic series ends. Which is, I didn't really care for that. I wanted her with Spike. But Willow goes on to date a werewolf. And then a witch. Then a Slayer. In the comics, she dates a demon. Xander dates first the Pragmantis. Then he'll date a mummy. A future higher power. I mean, well, a future part demon, then future higher power. I know Cordelia is just a human when they date, but she goes on to not be quite human. And then an ex-vengeance demon. Goes on a date with a cultist. Dates a Slayer. And then marries the Key. They're all doomed. None of their relationships are normal. It's very foretelling of everything that happens in their love lives moving forward. I think that's kind of cool. I mean, that wasn't intentional, but it's kind of interesting. But anyways, just keep in mind how much trust we put in technology. I think that was kind of the message of this episode, and I think it's kind of more relevant and important than ever before. But yeah, so I'm Jonathan. This is Sunnydale Live. Give us life.